Okay, instead of typing everything out, sometimes the videos are easier to answer some of the questions. So I don't have a sleeve cap pattern, but I have one that sews a curved seam into a straight seam. And what I've done is I've done clips where my marks are, and I used a black marker to kind of mark it so you could see what I was doing. And so what we're going to do is just line up each mark, and when we line it up, we're going to put the longer seam on the bottom, which will be the round seam, the curved seam I should say, and we're going to let the feed dogs do the easing for us. And so it's just, the only thing that's critical is line up your mark when you start sewing and grab a hold of that fabric like this and anchor it down, and you control what is fed through the feet. So what will happen is the feed dogs are going to pull the longer part on the bottom and ease it in as you go from mark to mark on this. I only have 3 marks. That's all I need for this. The other thing we're going to do is when you're sewing these curved seams in, the bottom seam will tend to want to walk out away from the seam line. So keep your hand underneath, and you're going to use this hand underneath to guide the fabric and to keep everything lined up on the edge as you're sewing. So that'll keep you from having to use any pins, and it'll keep everything perfectly aligned up. So I'll tell you what, let me move the camera around and get a little bit better angle on this so you can see what's going on, and we'll start sewing. Okay, now we're ready to go. Let's just get everything lined up here before we put it under the foot. And I'm going to get my round curved seam on the bottom, since that's going to be the longest. Let the feed dogs ease that in. Come around, get my seam line marked. I'm using black thread so you can maybe see it. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, and need to get it lined up where my seam is. So we're going to start out with everything flat at the 1/2 inch mark, and then I'll clamp it down and get it lined up and start easing it in. Needle down. Machines on, get my stitch length down to 2.5 roughly. Okay, get that tack down, get my alignment going here where my clips are. And here we go. So I've got a hold of it like this, my thumb underneath, and my finger on top, and I'm going to clamp it down, and I'm going to control what goes through the feed dogs on this to get it eased in. So here we go. Everything's still lined up. Going to my mark, coming to my next clip down here, and I will just line everything up. And what I do, I pull the little clip apart, and then I mark the even edge right there, and that's what gives me my alignment mark. Since you've clipped it, those seams will separate a little bit. It's not real good to use that, but use the part that's not clipped just in front of it. Okay, now we're going around the curve, so what's happening is this curved seam is trying to come out this way. So we're going to take our hand, put it under the fabric, and we're going to control it as we ease everything in. So here we go. Make sure everything's still lined up nicely. And I'm going to sew right up to where that clip is to make sure everything's still lined up good. Come here, foot pedal. There we go. Okay, I'm on my alignment mark again with my needle. Now I'm going to come to my next part. I can come to the end, and I've got quite a bit more to ease in here. This is a bigger curve, so I'm going to line up the end, then line up my notches also. Grab a hold of the front of the notch. Going around a long curve here, so I need to keep the fabric underneath pulled in a line with the rest of it. So here we go. Not quite at my clip mark yet, so let me get a hold of that. Still need a little bit more easing on the bottom here to get it lined up. So here we go. I'm really going to hold on to the bottom at this, because the top, I should say, I need the bottom to feed a little bit more to keep everything lined up. Okay, we're at our clip mark. Now we're going to line up the end. Alright, use our hand underneath to keep everything lined up on the bottom. So here we go. Alright, there's our ease seam. Clip my threads. Okay, I'll tell you what, let me zoom the camera out a little bit so I can show you the whole seam. So let me do that real quick. Okay, now I can show you the whole seam. You can see the easing that went on along the seam, so obviously pressing it will help flatten that out a little bit, but everything, all my notches are lined up. Means the seam is lined up perfectly. I'm lined up on the end, and I'm lined up on this end too. So anyway, get rid of the pins, just learn how to hold the fabric, and you can ease sleeve caps or any of that kind of stuff in. Again, this wasn't quite a sleeve cap, but it gives you the idea what to do. I do the exact same thing on a sleeve cap that's being eased in, and it's fairly quick and easy. Just line your notches up. Hopefully your pattern has them. I know some of the home patterns don't, but if you do, line them up, and instead of doing triangles, do little clips. I've exaggerated these clips bigger than I normally would. I only use 1/2 inch seams. And I normally just do very small snips, about half the size of what I've done here, but I had to do these bigger so you could see them on the camera. But anyway, when I do that, it's very easy to line this edge where you clipped up and hold it, because this one's going to spread out, but that's what's important, that stays lined up. And if you do that, keep the front edge lined up, you'll come out with a perfectly even seam. So tell you what, let me press this real quick and we'll have a look at it. So let me go press it and I'll be right back. Okay, I just did a real quick press, going over a ham with it. It'd be like a collar being eased in. So you can see the seam. It wants to curve really nicely as you're coming around the curve. So anyway, that'll show you quickly how to do it without pins. Get rid of those pins, have a little confidence. Cut up some scraps and test the theory first, and I think you'll find that you can get through things a lot quicker and easier without having to pin all this stuff around the edge, especially the sleeve collars. I've seen people put like 100 pins in them. By the time they pin, I can be done with the garment. So anyway, give that a try. Let me know if you have any questions or not, and otherwise you guys have a good weekend and take care.